all love a good old success story, but honestly, sometimes there's nothing better than a glorious failure. You know the type. A movie crashes at the box office, critics hate it, maybe the director swears off ever touching the genre again, and then, years later, the same movie is being worshipped on t-shirts, midnight screenings, Reddit threads, and in video essays by weirdos on the internet.
We are the weirdos, mister.
You are not in Kansas anymore.
Sci-fi is especially good at this, because, well, honestly, most of us aren't the normies that hit the cinema hoping for a popcorn flick. Some of the most influential, beloved, and downright weird films in the genre started out as box office disasters, punching bags for critics, or just plain embarrassments. And yet, time did its magical Healy thing, and these so-called failures became cult masterpieces. So let's count them down, from the mildly misunderstood to the most spectacular cinematic train wreck ever salvaged by fandom. Let's kick off with 2012's Cloud Atlas. When the Wachowskis teamed up with Tom Tykwer to adapt David Mitchell's unfilmable novel Cloud Atlas, the result was 6 interlinked stories spanning centuries, from a 19th century sea voyage to a post-apocalyptic future, all connected by reincarnated souls and the ripple effects of human choices. It was bold, weird, and spectacularly expensive. And it bombed. Audiences had no idea what they were watching. Critics called it pretentious, and the film barely made back its $100 million budget. It was too long, too sincere, and far too ambitious for the 2012 multiplex. But over time, something strange happened. People started rewatching it. The structure that once seemed impossible began to click. The music, the performances, and those emotional echoes across time suddenly made sense. Today, Cloud Atlas stands as one of the most daring sci-fi films ever made. A movie that tried to show how every life, every act, every kindness, and every cruelty is connected. Sure, it flopped, but it's the kind of beautiful failure that reminds you why artists swing for the stars in the first place. Of course, not every cult sci-fi needs 6 timelines and a reincarnated Tom Hanks. Sometimes all you need is a creepy bunny in a hoodie. Just ask Donnie Darko. In Donnie Darko, a troubled teenager starts seeing visions of a giant demonic rabbit who tells him the world will end in 28 days, leading him into a web of time travel, fate, and suburban nightmares. When the film hit cinemas in 2001, it barely made a ripple. Released just after 9/11, audiences weren't exactly in the mood for jet engines falling on houses and doomsday rabbits. It limped out of cinemas with terrible numbers, and Richard Kelly's career never fully recovered. And then the DVD came out. Suddenly Donnie Darko was everywhere. Dorm rooms, late night watch parties, hot topic posters. It was like the film was made for teenagers who wanted to believe the universe secretly made sense, but only if you listened to Echo and the Bunnyman while reading Nietzsche. It's messy, but that's the charm. It went from flop to cult Bible practically overnight, proof that sometimes a movie just needs the right audience and a stack of DVD players. But if Jake Gyllenhaal in the bunny suit was too weird, Disney was about to prove that neon motorbikes inside a computer were way too early. It's Tron. When a computer programmer is digitized and pulled into a virtual world, he must battle programs in gladiatorial games to survive. Disney thought they were being clever with Tron. A movie about people sucked into computers, cutting-edge computer graphics, neon motorcycles leaving glowing trails. How could it fail? Well, audiences thought it was cold and gimmicky. Critics said the story was nonsense, and Disney quietly wrote off the loss. But here's the thing, Tron didn't fail because it was bad, it failed because it was ahead of its time. Apparently, nobody in 1982 wanted to watch a movie about living inside a computer. The most exciting digital experience they knew was losing at Pong. Fast forward a few decades and Tron looks like prophecy. Its digital visuals were revolutionary, inspiring generations of animators and coders. The light cycle chase alone is unforgettable. So yeah, it was a flop, but now it's basically the cinematic equivalent of being the kid who brought Pokemon cards to school before anyone else. And speaking of cool, what about a movie that pretended to be bug-splatting action, but was secretly making fun of fascism? Next, Starship Troopers. On release, Starship Troopers was dismissed as brainless bug shooting with suspiciously fascist vibes. In the future, humanity is locked in a war with giant alien bugs, and military service is the only path to citizenship in an increasingly authoritarian society. Critics thought Paul Verhoeven made a recruitment video for space Nazis. The audiences just shrugged. And to make matters worse, fans of Robert Heinlein's original 1959 novel were not impressed either. They hated how the film stripped away Heinlein's earnest militarism and turned it into a cartoonish satire. But here's the catch. The glossy propaganda reels, the absurd uniforms, the smiling actors delivering wooden dialogue, all of it was deliberate. Now with hindsight, people get it. The movie is a biting satire disguised as a dumb blockbuster, and the fact it fooled everyone at first just makes it even funnier. So yes, it's a cult masterpiece now, and possibly the smartest dumb movie ever made. Of course, satire is one thing, but what happens when a director fights the studio tooth and nail and accidentally creates one of the greatest dystopias ever? Well, you get Brazil. In this bureaucratic dystopia, a low-level worker tries to correct a clerical error that wrongly brands a man a terrorist, only to find the entire system is working against him. Terry Gilliam's Brazil was supposed to be his magnum opus. Instead, it turned into a studio nightmare. Universal hated it, Gilliam refused to cut it, and he even took out a full-page ad in Variety mocking the studio. The US release was butchered, the box office tanked, and Gilliam was branded difficult. But once the director's cut circulated, fans realised that Brazil was actually a surreal, hilarious and terrifying vision of a bureaucracy gone mad. Imagine Kafka directed by Monty Python with a dash of Orwell. It's weird, it's bleak, and it feels like a fever dream, but that's the point. Today it's seen as Gilliam's masterpiece, and if you've ever been stuck on hold with customer service, you'll already understand the horror. But dystopian horror didn't start in the 80s. To see how far back sci-fi disasters go, let's rewind to 1927, where it began, with Metropolis. In this movie about a futuristic city split between decadent elites and oppressed workers, a young man joins a rebellion sparked by a mysterious robot double. When Metropolis premiered, it was the most expensive film ever made, and it bombed. Critics called it pretentious, audiences were baffled, and the studio went bankrupt. To make things worse, it was hacked down and re-edited so badly that for decades, nobody even saw the full story. But over time, Metropolis rose again. Restoration projects slowly pieced it together, turning what was once a disaster into one of sci-fi cinema's first crown jewels. Sure, it bombed in 1927 and almost destroyed Fritz Lang's career, but if you've ever watched a sci-fi movie with a robot uprising or an oppressive city, you're basically watching Metropolis's grandchildren. So yes, it flopped, but sometimes a film has to fail in its own time to become immortal later. Up next, let's talk about another movie that started as a flop but became the definition of sci-fi cool. It's Blade Runner. It is hard to believe now, but when Blade Runner came out, people were not impressed. In a rain-soaked future Los Angeles, the story follows a weary cop as he hunts down rogue synthetic humans called replicants, only to question what it means to be human himself. Loosely based on Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, critics said it was slow, confusing, and too grim. The box office disappointed, and Ridley Scott basically had to take a vacation to lick his wounds. But Blade Runner didn't age like milk, it aged like whiskey. The visuals, the rain-soaked streets, the neon cityscapes. It became a blueprint for cyberpunk. Every dystopian future since owes a debt to this film. Add the endless Final Cut versions, and audiences finally realised it wasn't just sci-fi, it was a philosophy in neon. So while it flopped in 1982, it's now probably one of the most influential sci-fi movies ever made. But if you think Ridley Scott had it rough, well, wait until you see how badly audiences punished John Carpenter for making aliens scary again. It's The Thing. At a remote Antarctic outpost, a shape-shifting alien infiltrates a crew of researchers, leading to paranoia as no one knows who is human and who is the monster. In 1982, Spielberg's E.T. had audiences crying over a cute alien, and John Carpenter thought, what if aliens were nightmares that ate your face? Spoiler, audiences hated it. Critics called The Thing disgusting and mean-spirited. The box office collapsed, and Carpenter's career took a beating. But over time, people came around. The insane practical effects, still unmatched today, and the suffocating paranoia made it a masterpiece of tension. Now, The Thing is at the top of horror sci-fi lists. It's bleak, yes, but it's brilliant. Carpenter didn't win in '82, but he definitely won the long game. And Carpenter wasn't the only director to struggle in the '80s. David Lynch also faced one of sci-fi's most infamous disasters with Dune. We all know the premise to Dune, right? On a desert planet, rival houses battle for control of spice, a resource that powers space travel, while a prophesied young noble rises as a messiah figure. One of the sci-fi masterpieces of our age. Well, David Lynch's Dune is the definition of beautiful disaster. Studio interference butchered it, Lynch practically disowned it, saying that the final cut was taken out of his hands, and critics tore it apart. Dialogue was clunky, the pacing was a mess, and poor Sting strutted around in space underwear. Audiences stayed away, and yet now it's sort of mesmerizing. The sets are exquisite, the ambition is wild, and it's so weird you can't look away. Quotes like, "The sleeper must awaken," and "Fear is the mind killer," became cult mantras. Fans embraced it, flaws and all, turning Dune into a midnight movie staple. Sure, Denis Villeneuve finally gave us the prestige version, but Lynch's Dune, that's one with space worms and Sting's abs. And now we reach number one. A film so legendarily bad, it's been called the worst movie ever made. And somehow, that's what made it immortal. It's Plan 9 from outer space. If you don't know this film, it's basically about aliens who reanimate Earth's dead in a clumsy attempt to stop humanity from building a doomsday weapon. We have wooden acting, cardboard gravestones, recycled footage of Bela Lugosi. It's got everything. Critics called it the worst film ever made. Audiences laughed it out of theatres, and its creator, Ed Wood, was branded Hollywood's biggest hack. He became a symbol of bad cinema, but also an underdog figure, a man who chased his filmmaking dreams no matter how little money, talent, or common sense he had. But here's the twist. People kept watching it, not just because it was secretly genius, but because it was also earnest in its badness. Plan 9 doesn't wink at you, it genuinely tries to tell a serious story about aliens and humanity, and fails spectacularly. But that's exactly why it's beloved. It's campy, hilarious, and oddly charming. Ed Wood may not have been a great director, but he loved making movies, and that passion bleeds through. The ultimate proof that even the worst director can find eternal life as a cult classic. So there you have it. 10 sci-fi disasters that stumbled, face-planted, or were straight up laughed off the screen, only to rise again as cult legends. It's kind of inspiring, isn't it? Sometimes failure is just a pit stop on the road to immortality. I mean, if Blade Runner and The Thing can be called flops, there's hope for all of us, right? If you enjoyed this list, let me know which sci-fi disaster is your personal favourite. Did I miss one? Are you secretly a Waterworld defender? Drop it in the comments. And if you liked this trip through cinematic failure, check out this next video on top 10 sci-fi movies from the 1950s Golden Age. My new book, Tao Solandis, is now available. Links in the description because, well, of course it is. It's set at the end of time where an ancient AI guards the final stories of the universe. These are 6 interconnected tales of sci-fi with heart, brains, and just a sprinkle of existential dread. So if that sounds like your thing, grab a copy now before the heat death of the universe kills us all.